Good morning, everyone. I am Mr. Ishitu Tasfai, your biology teacher. This is grade 12 biology, week 13. The lesson for this week is chapter 35, lesson 2, defenses against infection. Your textbook page 1014 all the way to 1019. Lesson objectives. At the end of this lesson, you will be able to describe the body's non-specific defenses against invading pathogens, describe the function of the immune system's specific defenses, and list the body's specific defenses against pathogens. Let's get the business started. As we discussed in our last class regarding infectious diseases, we know that there are a number of pathogens around us all the time. However, we are not sick most of the time. The question is, why are we free of infections, and why do we usually recover from pathogens that do infect us? Well, one possible reason is that our bodies have defenses against pathogens. These defenses can be categorized as non-specific and specific defenses. Today, we are going to discuss about these two types of defense mechanisms of our body against pathogens. Let's start with non-specific defense. What are the body's non-specific defense against pathogens? Non-specific defense include skin, tears, and other secretions, the inflammatory response, interferons, and fever. These constitute the body's first line of defense against pathogens, and they can be physical and chemical barriers. These chemical and physical barriers, namely skin, tears and other secretions, inflammatory response, interferons, and fever, make up what is known as non-specific defense against pathogens. Let's discuss first line of defense a little bit in detail. The most widespread non-specific defense is the skin. Very few pathogens can penetrate the layers of dead cells that form the skin surface. On the other hand, other non-specific defenses protect our body that are not covered by the skin, such as the mouth, the nose, and the eyes. Saliva, mucus, and tears contain a very powerful enzyme called lysozyme that breaks down bacterial cell walls. Mucus in your nose and throat traps pathogens. Then cilia push the mucus-trapped pathogens away from your lungs. Stomach secretions destroy many pathogens that are swallowed with food or drink. Now, the second line of defense. If pathogens make it into the body through a cut in the skin, for example, the body's second line of defense swings into action. These mechanisms of the second line of defense include the inflammatory response, the actions of interferons, and finally the fever. Right, the inflammatory response. The inflammatory response is the second line of defense that causes infected areas to become red, painful, or inflamed. The response begins when pathogens stimulate cells called mast cells to release chemicals known as histamines. These chemicals known as histamines increase the flow of blood and fluids to the affected area. As the diagram right here indicates, the bacteria may get opportunity to enter the skin when there is a cut through the skin by a sharp wood, as you can see right here. Now, this causes an inflammatory response okay, redness or a kind of inflammation. Now this will stimulate special type of cells known as mast cells to release a chemical called histamine. This in turn calls for increased blood flow to the affected area, okay, and one of the components of the blood are the white blood cells. So fluid leaking from the expanded blood vessels causes the area to swell. White blood cells move from blood vessels into the affected tissues. As you can see here, special type of white blood cells known as phagocytes are marching to the affected area in order to engulf and digest these bacteria or pathogens. So many of these white blood cells are phagocytes, which engulf and destroy bacteria, as we have said. All this activity around a wound may cause a local rise in temperature. That is why we feel warm around a wounded area most of the time. The second line of defense are interferons. When viruses infect body cells, certain host cells produce proteins that inhibit synthesis of viral proteins and help block viral replication. These proteins, called interferons, because they interfere with viral growth. Interferons slow down the progress of infection and thereby buy time for specific immune defenses to respond. The third type of second line of defense is fever. The immune system also releases chemicals that increase body temperature, thereby producing a fever. The increased body temperature may slow down or stop the growth of some pathogens. Higher body temperature also speeds up several parts of the immune response. Now let us turn our attention to the second major type of defense against pathogens, which we call it specific defenses, which constitute the most important part of the immune system. What is the function of the immune system's specific defenses? The immune system's specific defenses distinguish between self and other, and they inactivate or kill any foreign substance or cell that enters the body. Recognizing self. A healthy immune system recognizes all cells and proteins that belong in the body and treats these cells and proteins as self. This ability to recognize self is essential because the immune system controls powerful cellular and chemical weapons that could cause problems if turned against the body's own cells. Recognizing non-self. In addition to identifying self, the immune system also recognizes foreign organisms and molecules as other or non-self. Once the immune system recognizes invaders as others, it uses cellular and chemical weapons to attack them. After encountering a specific invader, the immune system remembers the invader, enabling a more rapid and effective response if that same pathogen or a similar one attacks again. This specific recognition, response, and memory are called the immune response. What is an antigen? An antigen is any foreign substance that can stimulate or trigger an immune response. Typically, antigens are located on the outer surface of bacteria, viruses, parasites, or any other invaders or pathogens. The immune system responds to antigens by increasing the number of cells that either attack the invaders directly or that produce proteins called antibodies. As you can see on the diagram on the right, the main role of antibodies is to tag antigens for destruction by immune system cells. Antibodies may be attached to particular immune cells or may be free-floating in the plasma. The shape of each type of antibody allows it to attach to one specific antigen. As you can see here, antibodies are Y-shaped chemicals that tag and destroy antigens. The body makes up about 10 billion different antibodies. Now let us turn our attention to special component of the immune system called the lymphocytes. What are lymphocytes? Lymphocytes are special type of white blood cells that make up the immune system or the immune response. The main working cells of the immune response are the B lymphocytes or B cells and the T lymphocytes or T cells. The B cells are produced in and matured in the red bone marrow. B cells have embedded antibodies and discover antigens in body fluids, as you can see the diagram on the right. T cells, on the other hand, are produced in the bone marrow but mature in the thymus, a type of endocrine gland. T cells must be presented with an antigen by infected body cells or immune cells that have encountered the antigen. You can see T cell on the right hand side here. And each B cell and T cell is capable of recognizing one specific antigen. A person's genes determine the particular B or T cell that should be produced. When mature, both types of cells, B cells and T cells, travel to lymph nodes and the spleen where they will encounter antigens.